Good afternoon, everyone. The Madison County Board of Education work session board meeting is now open. Mr. Curry, do you mind praying over the meeting, sir?
Sure. Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, we're thankful for service. Lord, we ask that you bless our students, our teachers, our families as we endeavor to lead the Madison County School District. Lord, we ask you pray for the families in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and other been devastated by the hurricanes. We ask you keep them and pray for them and protect them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Nathan. Informational items, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, sir. This afternoon, we have our elementary data review, but before we have Ms. Bass start, Ms. Bass, would you like to share a little bit about where you were, I think it was on Wednesday, with the Dillon Dean?
Yeah, sure. So Mr. Kubik received an email from a radio personality locally that said that there was Concerts for a Cause coming up and that they wanted to provide musical instruments for school students, to use. And they wanted to provide guitars, and so I sent that out to all of our arts teachers, music, choir, and the teachers who responded received all of the guitars that they requested. So we went there just to receive that. So it's a total of 55 guitars that have been donated to the district. And so different schools requested different amounts, but we got a full class set at a couple of schools, so that's really exciting. And it was just truly a nice event and a great way that our teachers will get access to something that they wouldn't otherwise have. So.
That's why I'm a little sleepy this morning.
Oh, you went? Did you go?
Yeah, it was great. It was one of the best things I've seen in a long time. It was made for TV. They were filming for TV. I've never been to a event that was being filmed for TV, so that in itself was an interesting thing to learn, but it was really beautiful the way they honored him.
Blair Michael from WDRM.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the name. Yes.
The gentleman was a producer from Nashville, and last year the George Jones one was for, it was either law enforcement or firefighters for family members, and they raised money. This year it was for public education and musical instruments, specifically guitar. So it was quite a treat that we weren't expecting, and this past representative was still there, and got to meet Mr. Dillon and Ms. Dean, one of those.
Yes.
All right.
So.
Elementary data review.
Okay. So tonight we're going to go through our end of the year 2024 data. So this is all spring data, nothing new from this school year. So this is a reflection of the work that was done in the 23-24 school year. I printed a copy for you, so you have that there. Before I get started, I want to introduce, I have Miss Bonnie Richburg. She is our elementary math specialist. And then Miss Ginger Henshaw, who's our elementary coordinator. Dr. Nancy Curry was unable to be here tonight, but she's our elementary literacy specialist. So that makes up our elementary support department for instruction. So as we're getting started, I just wanted to remind everybody kind of where we're at from the impacts of COVID learning loss. So the group that was in kindergarten in 2020, when things were shut down, are now fourth graders. And you can see how that matriculates for all of our grade levels as far as learning loss. Those grades 4 through 12 are the students who really were impacted by the learning loss from the lost instruction from COVID. And so I just want to point that out because as we go through the data, you will notice some differences, most likely with those grade spans. But something interesting and unique that I just want to also mention is that in those K-3 students, although they weren't impacted by learning loss, they were impacted by early childhood socialization. And so we have seen, the skills that students generally come to us in early childhood with, sharing, eye contact, behavior, following rules, is a little different for this little group of students as well. So hopefully as we begin to matriculate up, we're going to start seeing less and less of those impacts. Tonight, we're going to go over assessments with you. The M-Class assessment is the state-approved screener for K-3 literacy, and that focuses on early literacy skills. We utilize it as well to progress monitor how students are progressing in early literacy skills. iReady is the state-approved screener that is given to all students in grades 4 through 9 to screen their reading skills and their math skills. Now, iReady also has some instructional components as well, but they are on the required list for the State Department to meet the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act requirements. So that's why we have M-Class and iReady for those. And then we'll go through the ACAP summative data, and that is the state assessment given to students in grades 2 through 8 in reading, math, and science. Science is given only in grades 4, 6, and 8. So you'll notice that on that slide as well. So before we get started on ACAP proficiency, I want to talk to you just a little bit about the Alabama Literacy Act and how those scores are a little bit different. So a lot of the times it's not well explained in the news media or releases what the difference between sufficiency is and proficiency. So there are two different terms that I will use tonight when we go through the data. So proficiency means that the student's performance on the entire English language arts assessment, and that shows you their performance in 4 category levels: a level 1, lowest level, to a level 4, highest level, which is above grade level performance. And then sufficiency is the measure of the student's performance only on the reading portion of the ACAP summative assessment in 3rd grade. So it is into 2 categories. It's either you have it or you don't have it. So sufficiency is a yes or a no. And then proficiency is in levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when we talk about proficiency, we talk about how well the student has performed on the whole English language arts assessment. So that includes reading, writing, grammar, all of the things that go into English language arts. But sufficiency is only on the reading portion of the 3rd grade assessment. So you all probably remember that when the Literacy Act rolled out, there was guidance in it that said students who were not sufficient by the end of their 3rd grade year could be retained due to the Literacy Act. So I wanted to go through that data with you tonight. But before I do, a couple of things I just wanted to point out. We have given you in your presentation all of the school's individual data. I won't, for time's sake, go through all of that, but it's there for you. And if any of you have information you need about your specific schools, your feeder pattern, you can contact me and I'll give you that information. But I did want to highlight something on this slide for sufficiency. I just wanted to point out the gains that have been made in a couple of our sites. So Madison County Elementary in 2022 had only 57% of their 3rd graders sufficient in reading. And then at the end of the school year last year, we had 92% of 3rd graders sufficient. And that is something I think is worth pointing out and celebrating that progress and growth. And the same for Madison Crossroads. We've had that growth from 78% sufficiency to 91%. And that sufficiency is telling us that those students are reading sufficiently at grade level. But it does not encompass all the English language arts skills. Just want to make that distinction. So as a total, last year we had 1,498 3rd graders tested for ELA. And out of that, 94% of them were promoted based on their sufficiency on the ACAP. So for a very large school district, which I consider us a pretty large school district, I think that 94% of them being out the gate sufficient is very, very good performance. So in the Literacy Act, there are pathways that students can take to be deemed sufficient if they don't make it on that one single assessment. So one of the pathways is that they can have a good cause exemption. A good cause exemption is for students who may have an IEP that addresses their reading needs. It might apply to some of our English learners who are in their first year in the United States. And then it might also apply to some students who have a 504 plan. So 3.5% of our third graders were promoted on a good cause exemption. 0.9%, which is a little less than 1%, are students who retook the ACAP at the end of summer learning, and they were then promoted to third grade. And then we had less than 0.5% who were promoted based on portfolio evidence. So what that means is that the teacher had documented instructionally that the student was sufficient in reading based on some common assessments that we provide throughout the year at the district. And so that's how those portfolio students moved forward. Now, 0.33% of our third graders were retained. That was a total of 5 students. Out of those 5 students, 2 of them were at the request of the parents. So the other 3 were the only 3 students in Madison County Schools who did not meet the sufficiency to be moved forward.
I want to make sure I understand the intertwining between the portfolio and the readiness assessments that are given. So if a child scores well on those readiness assessments, those 3 readiness assessments or 2, and they have a bad day on that test, this provides some leeway for us to move forward?
Correct. So if a student maybe has test anxiety, they don't perform well, but their iReady data showed that they've made progress, their M-Class showed that they've made progress, and the teacher has noted that in a one-on-one or small group assessment setting that that student is capable of producing the reading that is expected. So.
Thank you.
So I'm going to turn over the ACAP proficiency data to Ms. Henshaw, and she's going to present that part. And so remember, when we talk about proficiency data, we are looking at students who, in their encompassed score on the English language arts, scored either a level 3 or a level 4 on the entire ELA.
Hi, I'm Ginger Henshaw, and I'm excited to share with you our ACAP data. On this first slide, you see our ACAP English Language Arts comparison. The blue column is the Madison County School System average. So in second grade, 67% of our students were proficient. They scored a 3 or a 4 on the ACAP. The green column that you see there is the state average. And then the gold column is our percent that we were above the state average. And so I'll give you a second that you can look at those columns and where each of our grade levels fell in their proficiency and how we compared with the state average. This slide shows you the ACAP math comparison, and the colors are the same. Blue is our Madison County School System average, green is the state average, and the gold is the difference. I would like for you to remember that our 4 through 8 students were the most impacted by COVID, and national data has indicated that math has been negatively impacted because of how we have to have that firm foundation in our math skills. But coming from a local school, I can tell you that everybody has worked very hard to get that improved. This shows you ACAP proficiency by grade. The blue column is the English Language Arts proficiency for that grade. The green column is the math proficiency for that grade. And then the gold column this time is the science proficiency for the grade. And only 4th, 6th, and 8th grades are assessed in science. And yesterday I had the opportunity to go to Hudson Alpha and meet with their educational specialists, and we were talking about field trips and working with our teachers. And one of the things that they mentioned was that the science concepts were lacking across the state. And we didn't talk about ACAP data at all yesterday, but when I'm looking at this, I see that in what they were explaining to me yesterday.
I see a big trend going from elementary school to middle school.
Yes.
You know, you got a 12% drop, which is about a 1/3% change down.
Yes.
And, of course, I'm a middle school math teacher, and that is an interest of mine.
Yes. All right, so the next slide shows our 3-year ACAP proficiency, and each column encompasses grades 2 through 8. In ELA, you can see we've had a slight increase each year. In math, you see we were back to where we were 2 years ago. And in science, you can see we went down 5%, and that down was in the 6th grade and the 8th grade, because our 4th grade had increased. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is our ACAP growth data. So we want our students to have average or better growth on the ACAP. A student's growth is measured with 2 years of data, so second graders don't have growth data because it's the first year that they've taken the test. And if we have a new student who comes in, let's say we have a new 4th grader that comes in and we don't have 3rd grade data, they won't have a growth score. So they have to have 2 years of data, okay? And that will show us how they performed in relation to other students who started at the same place that they did. And the growth percentile shows the impact that the educational program has had on our students. So you'll look at this. This is our growth by grade level. And you can see in blue, in 3rd grade, 62% of our students met their growth goal. And 58% of our students met their math growth goal. And you can see that across for each grade, the percent of students that met their growth goal. And here you can see our ELA growth across 3 years and our math ELA growth. And the interesting thing to me is that even though our math scores went down some, a higher percentage of our students met the growth goal than they did the year before. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Bonnie to talk with you about MClass and iReady data.
How are y'all? Okay, so MClass data, as Ms. Bass said earlier, for the Literacy Act, we have to give a universal screener. MClass, which used to be DIBELS, so if you remember that term, MClass is the new DIBELS, and we give it 3 times a year. And this is our data, and it's based off of kindergarten through 3rd grade students. So all of those students take the MClass. And overall, we want our students at benchmark or above. And as you see at the end of the year, we ended a total of 78% of all of our K-3 students were at or above benchmark. For our iReady district data, iReady also, we give it 3 times a year. For the math, this is kindergarten through 9th grade. All of those students take iReady math. And then in 10th through 12th, our Tier 3 students take iReady math 3 times a year. We also use this for our progress monitoring. We do growth monitoring checks throughout between our diagnostic. At the beginning of the year, where it says the 1 grade level below, that's really where our students, we want our students there or in the green, because this assessment at the beginning of the year, if they're a 4th grade student, it is going to be assessing them on fourth grade standards. So if they're new to fourth grade, we want to hope that they have mastered third grade standards. So being that one grade level below would put them right where they need to be. But then as we move to the end of the year, we want them in the green, that early on or the mid or above. We know if students are in the green at the end, typically they're scoring that proficiency of 3 and 4 in ACAP. So we see that correlation between these two assessments.
Can I ask a question about that real quick? So this is K through 9 for the whole
For the whole
school system,
district.
but we can get with you if we want to see our specific
Yes,
schools and feeder
yes.
patterns.
Harder to mine that data, we have to get.
I don't think you would be able to put it up here tonight, yeah.
No, we don't have enough slots.
Provided to you,
Yes.
But a lot of iReady's data, we have to get the company to pull it down to get it sorted specifically by grade level and by school.
Okay.
So, but yes, we can make it available to you.
Okay, thank you.
And then this is our iReady reading, which is 4th through 9th grade. All students take the iReady reading because with K3 students, based on the Literacy Act, they have to do the M class. So we do not assess third grade students with iReady reading. We really start 4th grade, so 4th through 9th, and then again, our 10th through 12th Tier 3 students are assessed with iReady reading. And so if we began that 28%, that's saying the students are right where they need to be, entering that grade level. But then at the end, we ended up with 46% in the green at the end of last year for our iReady reading.
Now, the 2 grade levels below and 3 grade levels below, that includes our students who have IEPs and 504s?
Yes, so all students
All
take
students
this.
regardless of status?
I think too, with this, it includes our students who are at risk in grades 10 through 12.
Yes, so that's our, yes. So this data is all of our students that take that.
How do you determine an at-risk student in 10 through 12?
So a student who has not met benchmarks and is more than 2 years below grade level, they go into a progress monitor program through iReady, and they're assessed the 3 times a year to progress monitor. They're supposed to be receiving interventions targeted during that time. But it does, so we have asked the company to pull for us taking those students out because they would determinately lower that percentage or raise the percentage of students who are below grade level, but that would include many of the students who are on a 504 plan, a special education plan, something of that nature.
So they receive instruction in addition to their
That is
normal
correct,
coursework.
yes.
So instead of taking Geometry 1 in 9th grade, they take Geometry 1 plus some assistance to get them.
That's correct.
Yes.
Our expectation is that they have a remedial support class as well.
Thank you.
And this just gives us that data so we can also track the students and see how they're progressing towards mastery of those standards.
So as you can see, we have some work to do. Obviously, data is just a starting point for us, and when we go through data that is a year old, it's kind of an autopsy at that point. There's nothing we can do to change what has happened in the past, so we have to begin to look at what we're going to do in the future. But overall, I wanted to give you a slide that just combined all of our grades. So this in ELA is those grades 3 through 8, math also, and science 4, 6, and 8. And so those are just the comparisons to the average for Alabama. And you can see we're still outperforming the average, but if you ask me if it's good enough, I would say no. We definitely have some work that we need to do. So an interesting thing I just wanted to point out about ACAP growth data is it's kind of a moving target. So if a student has what the state determines as a high level of growth, they've grown faster than 41%. And that gets recalibrated every year for every student, and it's a comparison score.
It's based on the first test they take at the beginning of the year using one of those 3 evaluations.
No, so this ACAP is based on how they ended their previous year.
Okay.
And then, but it combines to reset what 41% growth is every year based on how all students grew. I have the specs on that. If you want to read it, I can send it to you. But it's one of those things where no matter how much we grow. The state always shows a growth rate of 59%. And then ours, so that's why you don't have a comparison there, because the way it's recalibrated is it's always recalibrated to 59% for the state growth rate. And so it's impossible to really judge growth rate in comparison to another growth rate. We really just have to look at it as how are our students growing, and 60%, more than 60%, a little bit more than 60% of our kids are meeting that 41% growth rate or higher last year from their previous year. So, but I just, wanted to point that out. That's why there's not a comparison score to the state, because the state's growth rate always says 59. So what are our next steps to try to improve this data? So obviously we know math needs some serious intervention and support. The Office of Math Instruction, which is OMI, is providing more math support for our schools and more math support for our math coaches. We're very fortunate in our district. Almost every one of our elementary schools has a math coach. And so they do a lot of working with them to target the instruction inside the building. AMSTI continues to provide some professional development and support, and we as the district are providing OGAP math training, which is for our elementary grades. It's more focused on a multisensory approach to learning math, where students get a deep understanding of the meaning of a number, the place value of a number, and then numeracy as a whole. And then we have purchased a new math intervention program. That has been something that the district has not had previously. Our schools have been really asking for, what do we do with students who are struggling in math? What kind of intervention? We were hesitant to purchase anything because the Numeracy Act is supposed to provide us with a list of what are their approved interventions. We have yet to receive that list. We have principals who are serving on that task force, and they've indicated to us that they believe Do the Math will be one of the ones on the list. So we went ahead with a little bit of our remaining ESSER money, purchased Do the Math, and it's ready to be distributed, and we will provide professional development support for the math coaches and interventionists at the schools in Do the Math. So that's coming this year. Another initiative that we've recently started is we're going to work with our instructional leaders, so principals, assistant principals, coaches, on identifying what our high-quality instructional practices are and what our guaranteed and viable curriculum should be in all classrooms. And they're working together collaboratively to determine what their focuses are going to be for walkthroughs and observations in the schools. And they're collecting that data each month, bringing it back to our meetings. We're disaggregating that data, and we're looking at how we can target supports to improve the instruction for those specific teachers. One of the things that's a frustration is we provide a lot of professional development, and whether it goes back and is turned around in the classroom or is being utilized is not always clear. We don't always have accurate data on that. So our goal with this is to really begin to look at, are we implementing what we're providing to be instruction, and are we implementing the core instructional programs that are being provided, and do our teachers have the resources that they need to improve their instruction? So our hope with this process is to gather that data so that we can have an actionable plan moving forward. The state has put forward that MCSS is going to be done in their scope, so they're going to be providing some support to our district for that. We were in the process for MCSS, which is a multi-tiered support system. We've been working on that for years. This is nothing really new for Madison County Schools, except we're getting tight on the expectations for the schools and some accountability to make sure that those things are happening. So this includes making sure that every school has tiered instruction in both reading and math for students who are struggling, and in hopes of growing extension as well as a part of that process. We're also auditing schedules to make sure that the time that is supposed to be devoted to instruction is being devoted to instruction. You know, there's state guidelines on how many minutes you should spend on core instruction for reading, math, social studies, and science. And so we're really working with the schools to kind of make sure that the students are getting equitable instruction in all of our schools with the expectation that these things are being met. And we're also working to align the curriculum and the instruction and the assessments to ensure the rigor matches the rigor of the ACAP. Because ACAP is one of the most rigorous assessments I've ever seen. It's computer-based. There are tools that the students have to be able to use through the technology that I think it impacts our math scores. So for example, when we were kids, if we took an assessment and you needed a ruler to measure something, you got a ruler. Does everybody remember that? Now they get an electronic ruler and they have to drag it on the screen to where it needs to go, and they have to get it to the right lined up on the screen using a mouse. And you got to remember, these are 7 and 8 year olds, you know, all the way through. So that use of tools really does impact, I believe, some of the outcomes that we see. So our goal is to align our instruction so that kids are getting good instruction on the use of those tools, making sure that they have been acclimated to the use of a mouse, to the use of a computer, because if they don't have those basic technology skills, the test in and of itself is more difficult for them because they're not confident in the use of the technology. So I'm sure that makes sense to everybody. And then this year, new science standards are coming out. There's a science textbook adoption, which Mr. Rogers is going to talk to you guys about. But we do believe that these new science standards are going to be more aligned with the ACAP science assessment. And so we do think that that is going to help our teachers tremendously. So that's where we're at right now. If you guys have questions about your individual schools, about feeder pattern, any of that, feel free to reach out to me. I can meet with you and we can discuss.
I want to thank you. This is much clearer than what I've seen in the past.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I appreciate that.
And of course, I have questions.
Oh, okay.
So let's go back to your ACAP, 24 ACAP proficiency by school slide. And
Okay.
That's going to be several slides in the back, but,
I don't have it in this presentation. It's in your presentation.
okay, that's fine.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, these
The
are
sufficiency or the proficiency?
proficiency.
I don't have it in this presentation,
Okay.
yes, sir.
But the way I understand this, based on your explanation, these are the kids that scored 3s and 4s.
Correct.
So these are the kids who should be making A's and B's, by and large, if there's a reasonable correlation between the grades and the test results.
Okay.
Well,
And there's a lot with grading, and I don't think tonight's the night probably to get into that, but there's a lot with grading where grades can be skewed. You know, if a teacher is giving a kid a 100 for bringing in canned food for the canned food drive.
and I think that's unethical, by the way.
It can skew, but we have had discussions about that, the integrity of grading. That's something that we've really been working on the last few years. But unfortunately, I think some things like that still happen. I think that there are some participation grades that are given and things like that that can skew grades. But I think that would be a whole nother conversation with a whole lot of ins and outs. But
I agree, and I certainly don't have a problem talking with you
Yeah.
in private.
Okay.
And the other thing I was going to go is the assessments. I was recently in a middle school, and Mr. Daniels, and they were talking about doing formative assessments of 7 questions. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term formative assessments, that's a quiz. And then they would do summative assessment. Somebody got a PhD for this. That's a test of 20 questions. But the ACAP has many more questions than that. And like I'll talk about my experiences as a parent. My daughter got an understanding of her math at Spartan High School, but they were allowing 20 questions in 90 minutes for the test. So when she got to the ACT, it required Dad developing that mental agility to work that number of problems.
And again, that's kind of where we're talking about that, ensuring that we've got rigor built into that process. And although for every day-to-day assessment, you don't want it to be 100 questions because, you know, grading it, one, but two, it's not always necessary to assess the standard that's being assessed, but they do need practice with that level of rigor throughout the year so that they can build stamina. And so there are practice ACAP assessments that do put them through the entire rigor of what the regular one will be. And we are providing those this year for the schools who are willing to do that. So year one, we're kind of easing into that. But hopefully as we advance, that will become more of our regular practice.
Again, thank you so much for a very clear
Absolutely.
and concise presentation.
No problem. Thank you.
Ms. Bass, Ms. Richburg, Ms. Henshaw, thank you very much. You guys, excellent presentation. We really appreciate it tonight.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll go to our friend, Mr. Rogers, and our athletic handbook.
Good evening. So, you know, I started in this position about 2 years ago, and one of the first things that I kind of wanted to do was establish an athletics handbook for our district. A lot of our neighboring districts, a lot of districts around the state, around the country, have a handbook, and it's kind of gotten put on the back eye. So I'm happy to be kind of revisiting it right now. So tonight, I just kind of want to, currently our ADs, our principals, are reviewing the document that I already had in place. I'm getting their feedback currently. I'm going and meeting with our high school principals and ADs. Kind of my goal is to have a finalized copy, or at least as final as it can be, to y'all by October 26th at that board meeting to review it. Of course, I'll probably have to have Ms. Thompson look it over as well and that type of thing. And then us possibly vote on and put this in place by November 7th so that we can start using and enacting some of this kind of moving forward into the second semester and then have it fully operational, being used for the 25-26 school year, okay? So again, it's currently kind of under review, being looked at by our athletic directors and principals. So kind of the goal of this handbook, I want it to be more or less a one-stop shop for athletics in Madison County Schools. If I'm a teacher, if I'm a coach, if I'm a student athlete, I can go here and I can look and I can see everything that there is to do with athletics in our district. Again, things like the mission of our athletic programs in the district, the goals for our athletic programs, AHSA and MCSS athletic requirements. Again, for our athletes and for our coaches. A lot of times people don't understand everything that athletes have to do to be deemed eligible, to be able to participate in sanctioned sports. Parents don't always understand that, okay? This would be a place where they can go and they can see all AHSAA, all MCSS requirements to participate, also for our coaches. I want our parents to understand everything that our coaches have to do to be approved to work with and coach their kids, okay? And again, that would be something that's there. Also, expectations for our athletes. You know, unfortunately, every once in a while we get ejections. We have discipline that's brought upon an athlete for something that happens. And a lot of parents, despite it being out, you know, on our website, put out by the HSAA, reminded by coaches, a lot of times parents and students are just, they're unaware of it. They're oblivious to kind of the repercussions that can come along with, you know, not meeting expectations. You know, so again, establishing those expectations from our district for our athletes, for our coaches, and for our parents, okay? So that's kind of some of the things as well. You know, policies and procedures. Again, a lot of people don't realize that we have an athletic policy in our district. 619 is all on extracurricular activities, and that's good to know for our coaches and for our students and our parents, okay? Middle school athletics. That's something that I think we've talked about a lot. The districts around us all have some sort of middle school policy, okay? And I'm open to it. Again, that's why I'm running it past our athletic directors, past our principals, things like that, to kind of see how we approach it, okay? I've said it before, I was at Sparkman when we kind of changed the middle school athletic policy. We went from an absolute lockdown to, kind of the Wild West. I think we've got to find kind of a happy medium somewhere to where we still allow students grades 7 through 12 to participate at whatever level they should be at, while also, to a certain extent, and again, I hear this over and over from our middle school programs, protecting those middle school programs. You can see it across districts where, Huntsville City has fewer middle school programs than we do. And you see that kind of play out, and there be some suffering at the high school level from a lack of a middle school program. So again, that's something that I definitely want to touch on. Ticket prices and our ticketing systems. We're moving to, I've been working with Ms. O'Bannon and the finance department to make sure that we're all using S2 Pass, except for postseason activities that are dictated by the HSAA. So our ticket prices, ticketing systems, and then our athletic procedures, what parents can expect when they go to our games and that type of thing. I've provided you all with our 2 neighboring districts' athletic handbooks. Look through those. Ours isn't going to look exactly like theirs, obviously, but again, it's going to mirror theirs, as well as I looked at Hoover City Schools, Birmingham City Schools. I've looked some at like Mobile County, which is, I believe, one of the biggest school systems in the state. I've looked at all those to kind of try to give us a starting point with that handbook. And again, I feel like we can get more in line with what other systems are doing, and just make sure that our parents, our athletes, our coaches fully understand what the expectations, what the policies and what the procedures are for our athletic programs here in Madison County Schools. So that's kind of the direction I'd like to go. Again, I'm happy to talk more about that between now and then. Again, I'm sitting down with our ADs and principals now, kind of as we speak and going through that. Does anybody have any questions concerning the handbook before I move into textbooks a little bit here? And I've got the draft, like I said, but I kind of wanted our ADs and principals to lay eyes on it and have their opportunity to put, their input in before I shared that, if that makes sense.
I know we've spoken a little bit about what communication tool we'll use for athletics. and
Right, so as a
communication.
district, we're moving to a communications system. I wish that Carter or one of ours is here.
I'm just curious, do you have a timeline on whether that'll be ready to put into this handbook, or will that be something we amend in a future handbook?
So I think that we're gonna have our communication system in place this semester, is my understanding. Getting coaches and our athletic programs completely fully onto it will probably be a 25-26 school year.
Yeah, that's,
Because a lot of our programs have already started communication. If you got a basketball team and we can start using that system tomorrow, asking that basketball coach and those parents to get onto that now, with the season starting, this month, that might be kind of difficult. So I think that would probably be more of a 25-26 goal, to have all of our programs on one system.
if it's, I just was curious whether we thought the timeline was such that we could request that. That's not as much an expectation as I just was kind of saying, if we can get that, it would make sense to put this in there. But I also understand, I can't get my whole family in a group message by
Right.
tomorrow, so,
Yeah.
and I only have
And
3 people.
it's gonna be a BBCom Communications, is that correct, Dr. Minsky, I think? Yeah, it's a new company. Final Site? And they're developing, we've actually asked them to develop an app specifically, like kind of for our district, and we're kind of troubleshooting it now, I'd say. So, again, I've heard first semester, so. Do you have a question? We've already, well, we've already got a booster club handbook. We've got a handbook specifically for booster clubs. And whenever a booster club is established, or when new members are elected, they're supposed to get copies of that booster handbook and guidelines. So,
And thank you, Mr. Byrd, for asking that. I actually thought about the same thing, but I think a link in this handbook to that handbook might be.
and I would
more-
agree.
Otherwise, you've got a novel of a
Yeah.
handbook.
Yeah. I think my original that I started sharing with principals 2 years ago was about 30 pages. It's down to 18 now. So
That's pretty good.
we've made,
It's tough to get people to read more than about
yep,
4 paragraphs.
yeah.
I mean, I'm
So,
not gonna read it all.
and I think, and I believe that there is actually a link to that booster handbook so whenever we put it up digitally on our website and that type of thing, there's a lot of links there where parents can just click, HSA links, MCSS links, et cetera, to kind of make things more concise. So, any other questions on handbooks? All right, moving right along to textbooks. So, this year, we're adopting new science curriculum. The state's already adopted new science curriculum. We're currently waiting on them to approve the state list of materials, okay? They were originally supposed to approve it on 11/14. November 14th was the next state board meeting, and they were supposed to approve their list. They've now pushed it back to December 12th. So we're kind of waiting on the state. I spoke with with our state textbook committee chair yesterday, Dr. Jones, and she informed me, as well as Publishers Warehouse, our state textbook depository, has informed me that we can go ahead and start using the current list, the submitted list, to move forward with getting materials, sample materials and things like that. But again, we won't have an approved state list until December 12th. So again, right now it's kind of hurry up and wait as far as our adoption goes, as we wait on the state. But I want to go ahead and get the ball rolling as far as establishing our committee. We've done this with smaller adoptions, career tech, over the last 2 years that I've been in this position. Science is going to be a little bit bigger undertaking. This is going to be a K-12 curriculum used throughout our district. It's going to affect, again, all grades, K through 12. It's going to be what our teachers use as their main resource in the classroom every day. So in establishing this committee, you all should have a copy of that committee. Basically, it's going to be a 40-member committee. We'll have 28 teacher representatives. Basically, every school in our district, K through 12, will have a representative. I've also provided y'all with the alternates, where if we have someone that stepped out, I already had somebody this week that stepped out, said, you know, I've got a lot going on, I don't think I'll be able to participate. We've got an alternate there to replace them. So 28 teacher representatives, one per school. I've got 6 community stakeholders, basically one from each district, or feeder pattern. So for example, I know Mr. Brooks represents District 3, but there's kind of 2 feeder patterns there. There's a New Hope and a Gurley, Madison County representative, okay, parent representative. Over in District 4 and 5, where we've got Sparkman High School, you've got a parent representative from both the Monrovia, District 4 section, 5 section. That parent actually has a kid at Monrovia Elementary, Monrovia Middle, and Sparkman High School. So I think they'll be a pretty good representative. And then I've got an MXR parent who will kind of represent District 4. Okay, so again, 6 community stakeholders, parents, grandparents, that type of thing, one from each district and or feeder pattern, and then 6 district representatives from instruction, our English language learners, and also from Career Tech with Mr. Counts over at the Career Technical Center. So again, a 40-member committee. My role in this committee will be kind of just oversight and a facilitator, okay? I'm not a committee member, I'm not a voting member of this committee, but, you know, I'm kind of overseeing and facilitating the process.
So all 40 members will vote?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So all 40 will have a vote. And again, for a school like Central that's K-8, this does not only include those 40 members. They'll have time through our meetings to take information back to their colleagues in their building. So for example, like I said, if I have a K-8 school and the person representing that school is an 8th grade science teacher, she'll be able to work with her colleagues in K-7 to make sure that they also have input on there, and they'll be voting on kind of behalf of their school. School is K-3. If I've got a 2nd grade teacher representing, you know, that school, then they're going to they're going to be able to kind of work alongside their colleagues in those other grade levels. That make sense?
Mhm.
Do we have any questions over here?
Not really a question, I was just like, kudos, I'm not sure, that's a big committee.
It is a big committee, and it's actually smaller than our English Language Arts Committee, and I couldn't imagine. So, my only worry is that I get a 20-20 split on something, but, I'm praying that that doesn't happen. If it does, it'd be me that it happened to, so, you know, I guess I'll cast a vote at that point and be the tiebreaker, yeah, so, you know, so, yeah. I do, actually. I have to do that a lot for athletics. It's amazing how many times a tie gets down to the coin flip, so. So again, there's our committee. Again, y'all have copies of that. Kind of our timeline moving forward. Again, tonight, I hope that we have our committee approved by the Madison County Board of Education. The committee orientation, oath of office will be this month, maybe early next. I'm kind of waiting on some personal details to pan out before I make that decision. Then we'll start receiving sample materials during this time. Again, December, it was originally going to be November, but now in December the 12th, the Alabama State Department should have their science and CTE materials approved, and we should have that state list that we can choose from. Into the new year, between December and February, we'll have between 3 and 4 meetings. In January, we'll have a textbook caravan. We'll basically be working on a elementary and a secondary. We'll be kind of broken up elementary, secondary. On the 16th, I believe our elementary, textbook caravan will happen. The 17th will be our secondary. And basically, the textbook caravan is all of our publishers will come to one location. We can go and we can meet with them. We can actually look over materials. They'll present on their materials to where our teachers can have a better understanding. Our committee can have a better understanding of kind of how those materials work, the digital aspects of them, everything else. So again, that'll kind of happen between December and February. And then March and April, our recommendation after a vote will come before y'all. And we'll have that, I believe I'd like on the March 6th board meeting to have our list approved. And then we'll be submitting it to Alabama State Department, and we'll submit our order for science for the 25-26 school year later that month in April. So kind of a quick timeline. Again, we'll have the materials approved December by the State Department, and by April, we need to be placing our order for the next year's materials. So that's kind of where we're at. Any questions on that? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Ready to go on the next part of the meeting? Special session?
Yes, sir. I recommend approval of the agenda dated October 10, 2024.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the minutes dated August 8th and August 22 of 2024 as submitted.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a request to address the board. I'll call your name if you're here, just, no, you're here. Jerry Bowman. We'll give you 3 minutes, sir, to state your case, and when she gets the
I'm ready.
timer, she's ready to go.
Thank you for allowing me to address the board this evening. As you all know, I've become a somewhat regular fixture at a lot of these board meetings. I'm with a not-for-profit exchange program. I first presented to the board back in March of this year, presented again in April. I've sent several emails with a lot of information to everyone on the board. I've had several conversations with a few of the board members, kind of trying to figure out what kind of progress is happening. Our parents live in your districts. Our parents pay taxes in the districts, just like your natural students' parents do. Looking at the fees that are being charged for the exchange students, and I know I've heard from Ms. O'Bannon, that, you know, the state says it takes, and I can't remember the dollar figure, but it's $7,000 to $10,000 is what it costs to have the student in the school. I can't remember what the exact figure was. It was an administrative action that was decided to have the fee for exchange students at $3,860. The board policy says that you may charge for exchange students. Outward to parents looking in, the checks go directly to the high school. It goes directly to a general fund. I don't see any way of tracking how that money's being used to facilitate having an exchange student in that school. Our parents that host exchange students, they don't receive payment for it. It's a non-for-profit organization. They do it for cultural exchange. I've had exchange students in here, along with the students of the schools that have benefited from that cultural exchange. Your own policies show that you believe it is beneficial. I'm asking tonight, is there anything that's going to be done with that tuition fee? I've requested to maybe have it a few $100s where it's at least reasonable to help cover some administrative costs. But I have heard no formal answer from this board, and we're going on 8 months now. And if you are planning on doing something, and I've even offered my services, I've offered to sit down and meet with anyone and everyone willing to discuss it to see what we might be able to come up with might be more beneficial across the board for everyone, to be able to work together on this. If anything is going to be done, can you at least provide a timeline on when you think that might happen? That's all I have.
Mr. President, I recommend approval of the 2025 Science Textbook Committee as submitted.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
I recommend approval of naming the new school at McKee Road and Old Railroad Bed Road as submitted.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the August financial statements and payments of bills as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have two motions and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the contracts for services as submitted.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the bid renewal as submitted.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the personnel items and addendum as submitted.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Mr. President, before I go on, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Marcia McCants, who is our new Director of Equity Innovation. She'll be leaving Sparkman 9 and coming up to central office and taking over for Dr. Ballard at the Student Services Department. We're excited to have her. She's going to do a great job.
She
Congratulations.
will.
I recommend approval of the Assistant Principal Probationary Contract as submitted.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the supplemental contracts as submitted.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That will conclude our work session and special session. Mr. Bowen, I appreciate you coming in and talking to the board. I will get with central office and we'll get you an answer as to what we can do or whatever. But, yes. But we have an executive session for a unique transfer situation and an